I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. As temperatures drop, tensions rise in Lower Manhattan and around the country. I'll get a fresh perspective on the Occupy movement from a Catholic economics professor and father of two protesters. Plus, Bishop DiMarzio heads to Rome next week for a meeting with the Pope. We'll find out what it's all about.
The bishops of each country would go to the Holy See and make reports on the status of the diocese and actually meet directly with the Holy Father.
And Thanksgiving came early for these seniors, and they got a little glee for the holiday.
Let me join your hand in mine.
Anyway, it made our day. It made my day.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Occupy Wall Street hit a milestone yesterday. That's the 2-month anniversary of the beginning of the occupation. And rather than sitting still, occupiers held a day of action, marching through the streets of Lower Manhattan and across the Brooklyn Bridge. They also attempted to return to Zuccotti Park. That's the place they'd been camping out until earlier this week, when the city forced them out so the park could be cleaned. Now, police say they arrested around 250 people, but that number pales in comparison to the 700 arrests made back on October 1st. That's when protesters previously marched across the Brooklyn Bridge, causing it to shut down. And that's an incident that hit close to home for Hugh Kelly, a clinical associate professor at NYU's Schack Real Estate Institute. Two of Dr. Kelly's sons were among those arrested on October 1st. His written reflections on the Occupy Wall Street movement are going to be in next week's issue of the Brooklyn Diocese newspaper, The Tablet. And Dr. Kelly joins me now here in the studio. Hugh, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for inviting me, Matt.
Really appreciate your time very much. And I think you had a very interesting reaction. That's something that you write about, this piece that's coming up in the Tablet, that you said to your sons that this was sort of an admirable thing. I guess what was the phrase that you used? Regarded those as honorable arrests, that they were arrested under these terms. Why was that?
Well, if you get arrested for beating somebody up or mugging or robbing, I'm not good with that. But if you get arrested because of what you believe in, I support that. My wife Betty and I have tried to teach our kids, some basic values. One is really that people are more important than things, and the other is that if you don't act on your principles, then you don't have principles. And they were acting on their principles, so I was proud of that.
Yeah. And the principles of the Occupy Wall Street movement that the movement has expressed are something that you talk about in greater detail in this piece as well. And I think it's very interesting that you mention a comment that someone made about the protesters being naive and that they need to learn basic economics. But then you go on to say, no, not really. That's not really the case. That this, and even from a Catholic perspective, is something that, the disparity of income and wealth and all of that between the rich and the poor is something that they're kind of right on the money on. Explain that to us.
Well, let's deal first with the economics. That comment was at a professional conference of commercial real estate people, and very sophisticated, very well informed, and very wealthy, yeah. Many of them. In this case, I think the economics are on the side of the Occupy Wall Street protesters, because income inequality has been a growing difficulty for the country for quite a long time. I think most people don't realize that amongst the industrialized countries of the world, the U.S. has the greatest income inequality, and we rank between Bulgaria and the Cameroon on the world scale. And Casey Single said you could look it up.
Yeah.
You could look this up in a very peculiar place on the CIA website, because countries that have high income inequality are considered to be very insecure places worthy of the CIA's attention.
Wow.
So that tells you something. Middle class America has been shrinking. Really not just in this recession, but for a long time before. In 1970, 65% of American households lived in middle-class neighborhoods. That number is now down to 43%.
Wow.
The number of people who live in the very low-income areas has grown from 7% of the households to 14%.
Wow.
And it's also doubled at the high end of the scale.
That's amazing.
And New York City is the most extreme example of that in the country, so I don't think it's a surprise to find that this is the place that the Occupy movement started.
Yeah, a high concentration of the super wealthy and the very poor at the same time.
And a shrinking middle class.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about it. And you talk about, you know, the putting that sort of in perspective of where we fall as far as you know, disparity of wealth and or income in a ranking of other countries around the world is just amazing. I think with the developments in this movement, especially this week with everything that's gone on at Zuccotti Park and elsewhere, not only in Lower Manhattan, but you know, in other places, Oakland and other places where there have been, you know, a lot of I guess disruptions, a lot of clashes between protesters and police and things like that. People are wondering what is next for this movement. I guess what advice would you give to maybe the protesters who are out there, the people who are leading this, what has really been a grassroots sort of movement?
Yeah, first of all, you've got a good message, but it hasn't been articulated very clearly. The income disparity issue is an important one. We need to continue to shine a light on it. But anger and rage only get you so far. Nonviolent protest always works. It always works if it's persistent, if it's patience, and it's discipline. So you have to be in there for the long haul. Right. Next, you're speaking about the 99%. Speak to all of them. Do not make enemies out of those who your natural allies should be. So I think that's an important element, and put a face on the movement.
Sure.
Thus far, what Occupy Wall Street has tried to do is to be all about community and all about consensus. But at some point, to communicate with people, you need to have real faces and real individual stories to tell.
Yeah.
For example, my own kids were there. A lot of my professional colleagues are saying, well, you know, these are all unemployed people, they have time on their hands, they're students, it's been nice weather, and so on. All of my kids are employed.
Yeah.
They're all employed in jobs of serving people.
Yeah.
The retarded, autistic children, people with cancer. That's what my kids do. None of them makes $30,000 a year.
Wow.
And that's not uncommon. There are 46 million people in the country in poverty.
Yeah.
And the poverty line is $22,000 a year for a family of 4.
It's like, and you'd be surprised, I think, to learn how many people that we probably all know, as you mentioned there with your own kids, how many of them hover very close to that line, or just right above or right below. And I like also what you said before we have to wrap things up here. Also like what you said, I want to make mention of this, about don't make enemies of those who should be your natural ally in this. And yeah, I mean, a lot of times when you're down there sort of in the heat of the moment, that can happen. But you know what? The police are part of the 99%. You know, the people who are, the vast majority of people who are going to walk by down there, even, you know, some who work on Wall Street, are probably part of the 99%.
Exactly, and it's in Wall Street's interest to not turn this off, but to listen and learn. Because for America, the big problem is final demand from an economic standpoint. We don't have enough income to pull ourselves out of this recession.
Yeah.
And so business, in turn, needs to learn the lesson of Henry Ford, who said, I have to pay the workers who build my cars enough to buy my cars.
There you go.
And it's very similar.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm very happy to say, I think the bishops have been consistently saying this. They're following in the line of many great social encyclicals, everything, you know, from Rerum Novarum up to Populorum Progressio of Paul VI, and of course great Vatican II documents, Lumen Gentium and Gaudium et Spes, all say the same thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, Dr. Hugh Kelly, Clinical Associate Professor at NYU's Shack Real Estate Institute. We thank you so much for joining us. It's been a very interesting conversation.
Great, Matt. Thank you.
We'll have you back. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. All right, well, stay with us. A judge approves a bid for a Catholic diocese to purchase the iconic Crystal Cathedral. We'll have that story, plus the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later, it's a Thanksgiving celebration with song as a local school's glee club sings for seniors. First, though, let's have a look at today's headlines. Well, the man charged with attempting to assassinate President Obama had reportedly compared the president to the Antichrist. Oscar Ramiro Ortega Hernandez was arrested this week in Pennsylvania for firing a rifle at the White House sometime last Friday night. Reports say a man who met Ortega Hernandez back in July says the suspect told him that President Obama was going to announce that all children would be implanted with GPS chips. Ortega Hernandez reportedly went on to say, quote, "That's just what the Antichrist is going to do to mark everybody," end quote. Ortega Hernandez could face life in prison if he's convicted. President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama were not at the White House at the time of the shooting. They were en route to Hawaii to attend the APEC summit. Well, a new report suggests the Obama administration gave federal funding to an organization that promotes increased abortion access in Kenya. New Jersey Congressman Chris Smith says the report from the Government Accountability Office, quote, "raises red flags." Smith told Catholic News Agency that at a minimum, the administration ignored an amendment that prohibits federal money to lobby for or against abortion in other countries. The Government Accountability Office has called for an internal review of that case. Well, meanwhile, California's Supreme Court has ruled that Proposition 8 backers do have the legal standing to defend the measure in court. Prop 8, which California voters approved 3 years ago, defines marriage as between a man and a woman. Last year, a district judge declared the law unconstitutional, with Governor Jerry Brown deciding not to appeal that case. Well, it's now heading back to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. They'll decide the case on its constitutional merits. Well, meantime, another judge in California has approved the sale of the iconic Crystal Cathedral. And the winner is the Catholic Diocese of Orange. The LA Times reports Reverend Robert Schuler, the cathedral's founder, ultimately gave his blessing for the sale to the Diocese of Orange for $57.5 million. The iconic structure, which has been home to Schuler's ministry and Hour of Power worldwide broadcasts, will become the Diocese of Orange's cathedral by 2014. Orange Bishop Todd Brown says the purchase addresses efforts to have a cathedral large enough to meet the diocese's current and future needs. Well, from Egypt, unidentified assailants attacked hundreds of Coptic Christians who were marching to Cairo's Tahrir Square yesterday. 32 people, including 2 police officers, were hurt. The marchers had taken to the streets to commemorate pro-Coptic protesters killed last month in Cairo. In that incident, 26 people died, 300 more were hurt in the deadliest clashes in Egypt since the removal of Hosni Mubarak from power in February. Well, a Protestant pastor was gunned down in Pakistan yesterday. The Vatican news agency Fidesz reporting the killing took place in Karachi, that's Pakistan's largest city, as the pastor was returning home from a service. According to Pakistan's religious minorities advisor Paul Bhatti, the killing may have been motivated by religion, but there are indications it may also have been the result of a personal vendetta. Earlier this week, 2 Protestant leaders were forced to flee the country after reports say they were falsely accused of blasphemy. That's a crime that carries the death penalty if found guilty. Well, Pope Benedict arrived in the West African country of Benin yesterday for a 3-day visit. Church and civil authorities greeted the Pope after he touched down, and in a speech after his arrival, he urged Africa to protect its ancient values. Now, before leaving for his trip, Benedict also met with Italy's new Prime Minister, Mario Monti. Monti greeted the Pope at Rome's Leonardo da Vinci Airport as Benedict arrived by helicopter from the Vatican. The two spoke privately before the Pope boarded his plane for his trip to Africa. And as he does on all of his overseas trips, Benedict spoke with reporters during his plane ride. Rome Reports has details on that.
During the flight to Benin, the Pope held a brief meeting with reporters. He said that to actually help Africa, good intentions are not enough. Instead, he said concrete action is needed, actions that go beyond selfishness. When asked about the rise of evangelical and Pentecostal movements in Africa, he said even though they are successful, they have little stability. He then added that Christianity shouldn't be seen as something that's complicated or exclusively European. Through the gospel, the Catholic Church should convey a simple message that's concrete and understandable for everyone. The Pope described Benin as a country of peace. He also made it a point to mention its religious coexistence.
And finally, the bishops of England and Wales are urging parishes to mark Queen Elizabeth's Diamond Jubilee next year. In a statement, the bishops asked that on June 3rd of next year, that's Trinity Sunday, each parish offer prayers to commemorate the Queen's Diamond Jubilee or the 60th anniversary of her reign. They released a special prayer to be offered after communion. Well, stay with us. There's more currents ahead. Coming up, Bishop DiMarzio goes into the deep about his upcoming visit to the Vatican.
Non-practicing Catholics, mass attendance, the growth in the number of Catholics, and kind of a diminution of practice. Those are things that are on the Pope's mind.
Welcome back. Well, Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio will be on the go next week. He's headed to Rome to meet with Pope Benedict for a regular Ad Limina meeting that is required of all Catholic bishops. Now, unfortunately, we can't exactly be flies on the wall in that meeting, but I recently had a chance to kind of do the next best thing. I talked with Bishop DiMarzio just about exactly what the Ad Limina visit is and what he and Pope Benedict may talk about. And that's the subject of this week's Into the Deep. Bishop DiMarzio, thanks for being here.
Okay, good to be here.
Always appreciate having you in. You're actually going to be meeting with Pope Benedict as part of Ad Limina visits with U.S. bishops, his very first. Talk to our viewers about that and tell them, what does Ad Limina mean, first of all?
The Ad Limina visit is the term means at the limit, really. Every 5 years, this has been 7 years since the last time the bishops of each country would go to the Holy See and make reports on the status of the diocese and actually meet directly with the Holy Father. The visits in the last couple have been conducted in a little bit different way than they had been in the past, but certainly there is a meeting with the Holy Father and the region. The region for us is New York State, has 8 dioceses. That's a rather large region. And we would meet as a group with the Holy Father, and he would give an address directed towards some of the issues it might be of New York State or other issues that might be a national issue that he'll use the occasion to talk about. And then normally you would be more individual meetings with the offices of the Holy See. And in the past there was an individual meeting with the Holy Father. It seems that that's been changed, where the Holy Father would see 2 or 3 bishops at a time, from the same contiguous diocese, so that the issues will be similar. That seems the way things are going.
Sure. And is this going to be your first time actually meeting with Pope Benedict?
No. Well, but don't forget, Pope Benedict came here to New York, and I've been to the Vatican time since, and always had an opportunity at least to greet him.
This is very true. All right. Well, I guess what are some of the issues that are going to be talked about, do you think? I mean, of course, you can't really predict maybe,
right.
But of course there are a lot of things, especially happening in New York State, legalization of same-sex marriage and things like that. You think that's going to be high on the Pope's list to talk about?
It's hard to conjecture, but probably there'll be some mention of it. It's a major international issue that has affected our state and the nation. I think certainly the non-practicing Catholics, mass attendance, the growth in the number of Catholics, and kind of a diminution of practice. Those are things that are on the Pope's mind. We can see it in the various things that he's saying, especially with the new synod on the new evangelization coming up next year, and is declaring a year of faith beginning in October, will end next year when the synod ends, about evangelization. Basically, we're trying to rekindle the faith in people's lives, that they will practice it. And there are barriers for people practicing the faith, that are misunderstanding, issues with the church. So I think those would be things we would discuss.
Nice. And of course, as part of this, I guess you'll be sort of reporting the state of the diocese to the Pope. What will you have to say to him as far as that goes?
Well, I think what we can say is that the diocese is in a stable position at this time regarding its the number of Catholics, diminished a bit since the last time. That mass attendance is basically the same. if not a little bit increased. That we can say our financial position is stable, although there have been losses over the last several years. This year, it seems that we've balanced the budget. So these are the kind of things you would talk about.
Right. Well, very good. Well, we'll of course look forward to that, and look forward to hearing back from you about exactly how it all goes.
Okay.
So, well, you'll have to, come back.
Have another conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Bishop DiMarzio, thanks for being here. Really appreciate your time very much. And we have many more into the deep interviews of Bishop DiMarzio over on our website. Go to currentsny.net and watch them. Stay with us. There's more Currents ahead. When we return, it was a gleeful day for local seniors and students ahead of Thanksgiving.
They love to sing and they believe in sharing God's gifts.
Well, finally tonight, some children at one Queens school have been very busy lately. Now, you might think that this is just a little bit early, but it's not, I promise. You'll see in just a sec. The Glee Club at Most Precious Blood in Astoria sang last month at the Futures in Education Foundation's annual Scholarship Fund dinner. Told you they've been busy. They entertained those gathered at the Waldorf Astoria in Midtown Manhattan. Talk about the big time there. That was a lot of fun, and we were there to cover it. Now, yesterday, they put on quite a show once again, this time for senior citizens just a bit closer to home. The occasion was a Thanksgiving luncheon at the Woodside Senior Center. See, I told you it would make sense. And this was not only an opportunity to sing for another audience, the students also gave thanks for the gift of their voices.
We're here so that the children can share their time and their talents with other people around them. They love to sing and they believe in sharing God's gifts. So they're here to share their gifts with you. The Glee Club has been in existence for 3 years. This is our 4th year now. We have a relationship with Kevin Mack from Quinn's Funeral Home. He's very close to the school. And so he came to us last year and said that he actually does donations here and would we be willing to, again, share the talents that we have and sing for the seniors, and we said gladly.
I believe the role is to connect the generations, and we have the young interacting with the old, and it makes the seniors feel good when they see the young children, and the young children can learn from the seniors, so it's really a great generational connector.
Them, it's about how we sing and that we sing, and that we really shout out our joy. Last month we sang at the Futures in Education dinner at the Waldorf Astoria. There was 750 people, and we sang on stage for them. Doesn't matter whether it's 700 people or 70 people. Makes no difference to the kids at all. Some of the seniors came to me and said they had a tear in their eye when they heard the children sing, that they sang like angels. Sharing with everyone else and showing what we have and showing them that God gave us these talents and we want to bring them to them really just makes a difference in their day.
I tell you, tears came to my eyes at first, really, to hear them sing. Really beautiful.
Anyway, it made our day. It made my day.
I feel very good inside. Makes me happy to see these children sing like that.
They need some entertainment. They can't be stuck here forever. I want people to hear my voice because I really want to be a celebrity when I grow up. You get to express yourself. It doesn't matter if you sing poorly or greatly. It's just that you get to sing. I like singing, and I hope these people enjoy.
I love that. You can tell the kids do that for so many different reasons. So the one girl there, who said, "I want to be famous when I grow up." Yeah, there you go. You've got your start right there. You've already sang at the Waldorf Astoria in Manhattan. How many kids can say that, huh? But then you've got kids who just want to sing for singing's sake, and they love it. And that is really what it's all about. And I know that the seniors there, as you saw as well, really enjoyed singing, listening to the singing as much as the kids enjoyed singing in the first place. Well, that is it for this edition of Currents. Now, thank you for watching. Be sure and visit us online over at currentsny.net over the weekend. And you can also catch up with us on Facebook and on Twitter. Also, if you have a question, maybe a comment or a story idea for us, email it to us. Our email address is dropusaline, that's all one word, at currentsny.net. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.